Rayan stood by the large floor-to-ceiling window of his apartment, his fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee. The city below pulsed with life. Cars honking, people rushing, lights flickering. It was a stark contrast to the cold, eerie silence of his home. His phone lay on the marble countertop behind him, the screen dark, yet it felt like it radiated heat, like it carried a truth too damning to ignore. He had known, maybe not consciously, maybe not in full, but something in his gut had told him. The subtle shifts, the forced smiles, the way her phone was always face down, always silent when they were together. He had dismissed it as paranoia, a side effect of long work hours and a mind that never truly rested. But the evidence sat in his inbox now, a digital coffin for whatever they had once been. It had started with an anonymous message. A single sentence that changed everything. You should check on Ashley. She's not who she says she is. At first, he had considered ignoring it. A prank, maybe. Some bitter ex-colleague or a jealous stranger trying to stir chaos. But something about the way the words were arranged, the weight they carried, made him pause. And so, cautiously, methodically, he had begun to look. What he found didn't just confirm the suspicion, it eviscerated every ounce of doubt. There were messages, hundreds of them, texts buried beneath layers of deleted conversations, retrieved with a few simple tech tricks he had learned over the years. Flirtations that evolved into confessions, confessions that morphed into plans. And then there were pictures, taken in the dim glow of hotel rooms, at parties he had never attended, of moments she had never mentioned. The name M appeared over and over. It took less than 10 minutes to uncover the full name, Mark Dawson. A name he had seen before, mentioned in passing, tucked between stories of her work, her networking events, her harmless, insignificant nights out. His grip on the coffee mug tightened, the ceramic warm but brittle. He could already hear her excuses forming, could picture the way she would tilt her head, the way she would reach for his arm with wide, pleading eyes. You made me do this. I felt so alone, Rayan. You were always working. If you had just been different. He placed the cup down carefully, exhaling slowly. There was no confrontation tonight. No accusations, no raised voices, no desperate attempts to salvage the unsalvageable. He would not play the game she had designed. Instead, he turned to his laptop, fingers moving with precision, gathering everything, every screenshot, every video, every message. He was not going to beg for an explanation. The truth would do all the work for him, and when the time was right, he would let it. Rayan moved through the dimly lit apartment with the calm precision of a man preparing for war. The air smelled faintly of Ashley's perfume. Something floral, delicate, designed to disarm. It clung to the furniture, to the pillows, to the clothes she had left draped over a chair. He glanced at them, then looked away. Soon they would be nothing more than remnants of a carefully constructed illusion. His laptop screen glowed in the dark, illuminating the proof he had methodically gathered. A collection of betrayals neatly arranged in digital folders, timestamped and irrefutable. He had spent the last several nights extracting every piece of evidence he could find, backed up messages from her cloud, deleted call logs, even security footage from their building. She had been careless, or maybe she had simply believed he would never look. A notification blinked in the corner of his screen, another message from Mark. Same time tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about last night. Rayan felt a strange, quiet detachment as he read it. Not rage, not sorrow, just a cold, creeping satisfaction. This wasn't about confronting her. It wasn't about making her feel guilty. It was about setting the truth free and letting it devour her. He opened a new email window and began typing. To Mark Dawson, subject, a gift for you. You've been seeing Ashley for months now. I think it's only fair you know who she really is. He attached a handful of screenshots, just enough to plant the first seed of doubt. Messages where she reassured Mark that Rayan meant nothing to her. Photos of her in his arms while she was still in their shared home. Kissing him before walking through their apartment door to greet Rayan with a fabricated smile. His finger hovered over the send button. Not yet. Timing was everything. Ashley would be home in an hour. She had left that morning as if nothing had changed. Kissing him on the cheek, whispering something about dinner plans. He had nodded, even smiled. She didn't know that he had already started dismantling her world. He leaned back in his chair, thinking. The best deceptions were slow burns, unraveling piece by piece. He wanted Ashley to walk into the fire she had set, oblivious until it was too late. Her family, her friends, her workplace. She had spun a web of lies, painting herself as the devoted girlfriend, the wronged woman. If he played this right, she wouldn't have the chance to rewrite the narrative. He began drafting more emails. One for her parents, attaching a carefully curated selection of screenshots, messages contradicting the stories she had told them about Rayon's neglect and emotional distance. Another for her best friend, someone who had always looked at him with suspicion, no doubt feeding Ashley's delusions of victimhood. And finally, one for her workplace, where she had conveniently left out the part about sleeping with a business associate behind her boyfriend's back. The emails sat in his drafts, waiting. The clock ticked forward. When the door finally clicked open, Ashley walked in with an effortless smile, oblivious to the silent reckoning unfolding around her. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "Long day." Rayan looked at her, expression unreadable. "Yeah," he said smoothly. "Very productive." She leaned in to kiss him, and for the first time, he didn't hesitate. He kissed her back, soft and slow, memorizing the moment. The last time he would ever play along. Because tonight, the truth would finally break free. Rayan sat at the dining table, sipping his whiskey, watching Ashley move around the kitchen like nothing had changed. She hummed softly as she chopped vegetables, glancing at her phone every so often, no doubt checking messages from Mark. He had watched her do this 100 times before, the small, mindless rituals of a shared life. Only now, every movement, every glance, every pause between texts felt like a carefully rehearsed performance. But the curtains were about to drop. His phone vibrated against the dark wooden table. He turned it over, reading the message from Mark without reaction. "You good, babe? You seemed off this morning." His lips curled into a smirk. Mark still thought she was his, still thought she was coming to him, clean, unburdened, untethered. Soon he would know better. Rand took his time. He wasn't ready to hit send just yet. No, not yet. The moment had to be perfect. Ashley turned toward him, smiling, oblivious. "You're quiet tonight." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Just thinking." "About what?" She sat across from him, resting her chin on her hand, looking at him with those same wide, deceptive eyes. He exhaled through his nose, a small, almost amused sound. "About how much things change." Ashley frowned slightly, but before she could ask more, her phone buzzed again. Her gaze flicked downward just for a second, but he saw it. The hesitation, the slight stiffness in her fingers as she reached for the device. Her instincts were catching up. She sensed something. Rayan stood, stretching lazily. "I'm going to grab a smoke." Ashley wrinkled her nose. "You don't smoke." He met her gaze. "Maybe I've picked up new habits." He left her there, sitting in their pristine, curated life, and stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched out below, endless and indifferent. He pulled out his phone and opened the email to Mark. His thumb hovered. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, sent. Somewhere across the city, Mark's phone lit up. Somewhere across the city, the first cracks in Ashley's carefully constructed world had just appeared. Rayan didn't go back inside immediately. He gave it time. He let the poison seep in. A few minutes later, as he expected, her phone rang. Ashley hesitated before answering. "Hey, what's up?" A long pause. Rayan turned slightly, just enough to see her reflection in the sliding glass door. Her brows were furrowing, her grip tightening around the phone. "What do you mean? Screenshots?" she said, laughing nervously. "Mark, what are you talking about?" Another pause. Her posture changed, her body stiffening. "Where did you get those?" She shot up from her chair, pacing now, her voice losing its practiced warmth. "No, it's not. Mark, listen to me." He stepped back inside, and she flinched when she saw him. She was gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles were turning white. "Is everything okay?" he asked, voice calm, measured. Ashley stared at him, her mouth slightly open, words failing her for the first time. "I need to..." She gestured vaguely toward the bedroom, turning quickly, but he stepped in her path. Her breath hitched. He could see the calculations running through her mind. He tilted his head slightly. "Something wrong?" She swallowed. "Work stuff." "Really?" He arched an eyebrow. "Because it sounds like Mark is upset." Ashley's face drained of color. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. "You..." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You did this!" Rayan took a slow sip of his whiskey, then set the glass down with deliberate care. "I didn't do anything, Ashley. I just let the truth speak for itself." Her breath came quicker now, shallow and uneven. You went through my phone? He chuckled. That's what you're worried about? Privacy? He leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. You lied. You cheated, and now you're mad because you got caught? Ashley's eyes darted to the door as if weighing whether to bolt, but there was nowhere to run. Rayan leaned against the counter, watching her spiral. Mark's not the only one who knows. She blinked. What? He turned his phone toward her, letting her see the unsent emails sitting in his drafts. One to her boss, one to her parents, one to her closest friends. Her breathing grew ragged. No, you wouldn't. He tilted his head. Wouldn't I? She lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but he was faster. He stepped back, watching her with something that wasn't quite amusement, wasn't quite pity. You don't get to control the story this time, Ashley, he said, his voice dangerously soft. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time he saw fear. Not anger, not indignation, fear. You can't ruin me, she whispered. People will take my side. They always do. Rayan smirked. We'll see. He lifted the phone, and in front of her clicked send all. Ashley let out a strangled gasp. No, the damage was done. Within seconds, her world started to unravel. Her phone lit up with new notifications. Calls from friends, from her mother, texts asking, demanding, accusing, and then a single email reply. From her boss, Ashley, we need to talk first thing tomorrow morning. She covered her mouth, her breathing uneven. Oh my God! Rayan picked up his whiskey, taking another slow sip as he watched realization crash over her. This wasn't revenge. This was justice, and it had only just begun. Ashley stood frozen, her phone gripped so tightly in her trembling hands that Rayan half expected the screen to crack. She was staring at the email from her boss, but he knew it wasn't just that single message sending her into freefall. It was everything. The weight of truth had dropped on her shoulders all at once, and she was realizing there was no way to hold it up. Her breath was ragged. Her pulse visibly throbbed at her neck. She started, but the words tangled in her throat. She swallowed hard, trying again. You had no right. Rayan leaned against the counter, completely at ease, watching her unravel. No right, he echoed. I had every right, Ashley. I just chose not to scream about it. I let the facts do the work. She turned away, pressing her fingers to her temples as though trying to physically stop her brain from spiraling. Her phone buzzed violently in her hands. Call after call, notification after notification, each one another piece of her life breaking apart. Then a name appeared on her screen. Mom. Ashley hesitated but ultimately answered. Mom, I can explain. The voice on the other end was sharp, cutting. Rayan couldn't make out the exact words, but he knew the tone well. Shock, disappointment, disbelief. Ashley flinched, gripping the edge of the counter. No, it's not like that, she tried, but her mother wasn't buying it. Rayan watched, impassive, as Ashley squirmed. This wasn't just some fleeting mistake she could smooth over. Her mother, like most people in Ashley's life, had been fed a carefully crafted version of events. One where Ashley was the victim, the woman in the loveless relationship, the one who had been forced into mistakes by neglect. Now, that story was burning to ash. Ashley pressed her lips together, swallowing down whatever argument she had left. I have to go, she said quickly, hanging up before her mother could say another word. She turned to Rayan, her eyes brimming with anger, desperation, something dangerously close to panic. You don't understand what you've done, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My job, my family, are finally seeing who you really are, he finished for her, her nails dug into her palm. I didn't mean for this to happen. Mark was just... He was there. I was lonely, Rayan. You were always so distant, so... He laughed, a quiet, hollow sound. And there it is, he murmured. I was waiting for it. Ashley blinked, momentarily thrown off. The excuses, he clarified. The part where you twist it around so that somehow this is my fault. It's not like that, she snapped, but even she seemed to realize how weak it sounded. Rayan took a slow sip of his drink, savoring the silence between them. Then he leaned in just slightly, his voice low and cold. You weren't lonely, Ashley, you were selfish. She flinched like he had struck her. The phone buzzed again. Mark, Rayan arched a brow. Not answering? Ashley turned her phone face down on the counter, but not before Rayanne caught a glimpse of the preview. We need to talk. What the hell did you tell me, Ashley? I looked like an idiot. Mark was pulling away. And not just from her, but from whatever story she had spun to him. Ashley's chest rose and fell rapidly. I can fix this, she whispered, though it wasn't clear if she was talking to Rayanne or herself. Fix what exactly, Rayanne mused. The fact that everyone knows that you can't gaslight your way out of this one. She shot him a desperate glare. You didn't have to do it this way. Oh, I did, he countered smoothly. I let you build your own trap, Ashley. I just waited for the right moment to let you fall into it. She opened her mouth to retort, but her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't ignore it. She hesitated, but eventually tapped the screen, putting the call on speaker. Ashley, Mark's voice came through, sharp and accusatory. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke. Ashley swallowed. Mark, listen, Shut up! The fury in his voice sent a ripple of satisfaction through Rayanne. You told me Rayanne was some controlling asshole, that he ignored you, that he didn't care. But I just saw the messages, Ashley. You were telling me the same shit you told him. You said he didn't matter, that I was the only one. Ashley paled. You lied to me, Mark spat. You made me think. Jesus, A pause. A sharp exhale. I lost my job, Ashley. Silence slammed into the room like a freight train. Ashley's breath hitched. What? Your little affair? The company didn't like the headlines. And now I'm gone. Rayanne watched as the weight of that settled over her. She stammered. I didn't think. Yeah. Mark cut in bitterly. That much is obvious. Then the call ended. Ashley stood motionless, staring at her phone as though she could will the conversation away. Rayanne downed the rest of his drink and set the glass down with deliberate ease. Looks like your safety net just disappeared. She barely reacted. He pushed off the counter, walking past her. Start packing, he said casually. I want you gone by morning. Ashley turned to him, panic flickering in her eyes. Rayanne, you didn't stop, didn't turn back, didn't care. The truth had done its job. And Ashley, she was finally drowning in the consequences she had always believed would never touch her. The night stretched long and heavy as Ashley sat on the couch, staring blankly at her phone. The screen was littered with unread messages, missed calls, and notifications that she couldn't bring herself to open. Her mother had left her a voicemail, a tone laced with disappointment. Her boss had sent a meeting request that wasn't really a request. And Mark had gone silent. She had lost control. Rayanne, on the other hand, felt lighter than he had in months, maybe years. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city move on without them. It was ironic. Life didn't pause for betrayals, for broken relationships, for the destruction of carefully curated lies. It just kept moving. Behind him, Ashley finally found her voice. You don't have to do this, she whispered. He didn't turn. I already have. You want me to leave? She pressed, her voice growing more desperate. Just like that, after everything? Now he turned, but his face held nothing for her. After everything, he echoed. You mean after the months of lying, the manipulation, the nights you walked into our home pretending everything was fine while texting another man? She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. Rayanne exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. You had chances, Ashley, so many. You could have told the truth. You could have ended it clean, but you didn't. You doubled down, and now, here we are. She wiped at her eyes, but no tears had fallen. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You keep saying that, he said flatly, like your actions weren't intentional, like the texts, the lies, the gaslighting, the sneaking around, like none of it was a choice. He took a step forward, watching as she shrank under his gaze. But it was a choice, Ashley. Over and over again, it was a choice. Her lips trembled, her breath uneven. I don't know where to go. Rayanne tilted his head. Maybe Mark will take you in. The way she flinched told him she already knew the answer to that. He nodded toward the bedroom. I packed your stuff. It's in the hallway. She turned sharply, eyes wide. You? What, you thought I'd let you linger here, sleep in our bed one more night? He scoffed. No, Ashley, you lost that privilege the moment you invited someone else into your life while still keeping one foot in mine. She was silent, her breathing sharp and uneven. He didn't need to see her struggle. He didn't need to hear her beg. It was over. Turning away, he picked up his phone and scrolled through his notifications. The only message that mattered was from an old friend. An invitation to grab a drink. a sign that life was waiting for him on the other side of this wreckage. Behind him, Ashley's footsteps were slow, reluctant. When she reached the door, she hesitated. "You'll regret this," she murmured. "Walking away from everything we had." Rain smirked, shaking his head. "You already said that when you cheated. And look where that got you." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. For the first time, Ashley had nothing left to manipulate. She pulled open the door, stepping into the hallway where her luggage waited like a monument to her own downfall. The door shut behind her with a quiet finality. Rayon stood there for a moment, absorbing the silence. No yelling, no drama, no last-minute confessions, just peace. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. The truth had set him free.